And do you think I know that something that people, especially during the lockdown, a lot of people started being creative and they started like
Mm.
themselves to paint or to write or do new things. But people were constantly coming up against this kind of inhibitor, which was if they were too busy or they were too stressed or they were too tired or they weren't eating well enough, they kind of got that malaise that happens, that not feeling good about themselves, not feeling good in themselves, and that kind of drained the creativity from them. Was that an experience that you've had, and was that one of the reasons that you set up your wellness retreats that combine wellness and creativity for adults? Was it an idea around trying to look at those pillars of health and wellness that you need to bring in order to have that wellspring of creativity, or did it come from a totally different place?
I'd say that for me, my retreats and my mentorship program really came from realizing how much I would have benefited from that if I had that as a, young person, if I experienced being around people who, felt like they had a story to tell, and if it wasn't fear that was holding me back, which it was, and like kind of like that question of what do I have to say? Who am I to say anything? That's a big hurdle. And if in a retreat for like the adult retreat or the kids retreat, if there's any hurdle that I would want them to get over is that hurdle, and just not to what's the phrase, bury the lantern under the bush, but if you feel we have this, I think we all have this desire to create. I think it doesn't matter who you are, and I think that we don't all have the desire to create something and get it out in the world, but I think we all have a desire to I guess express ourselves creatively, whether it's in writing or painting or dancing. We all do it. When we cook, we're creating. We're taking something out of nothing, and that's a creation in a way. There are lots of different ways that we can express ourselves, and I guess with my mentorship program, it really is just about saying, don't worry what people think. They're too worried thinking about what other people think about them. So, so you don't
Yeah.
have to worry. Just be yourself and create, because to be honest, just because you set aside the time to do it, and just because you have the drive to do it, doesn't mean that the moment you sit down to create, you're going to have something worthwhile. A lot of creating takes peeling away the layers, and I think I did that in my classes. I think that's what I was doing when I was journaling all the time. I think that's what I was doing when I was reading a book and then writing about the book I read, or just writing nothing that made sense. I think even all that has to get somehow, whatever's in here has to get purged a little bit in order to find what's worthwhile to write about.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise, isn't there?
A lot of noise.
Yeah,
Gosh, more all the time.
more all the time is right. Absolutely, you said it in one. And what like I'm interested to hear like how the idea, because doing art retreats with young people is pretty unique. Uh, I don't hear of it a lot. And what drove you to do? I know you're saying it's because you wish you'd had that sort of mentorship or guidance or whatever.
Mhm.
But opening kids up to the artistic process, like I guess, what do you find or experience with them? Do you see them in predictable ways coming to the creative process? Are you surprised by them? How does that whole thing go? Like paint that picture for us a bit.
Okay, well, it's shocking. First of all, it's just like, oh my gosh, they have so much inside of them that they're willing to expose. It's like it. That's what's exciting to me, and that there shouldn't be a fear of me. It should not be a fear of making mistakes. That's kind of silly that you think, well, that's what would stop us from expressing ourselves creatively, that we're afraid of making a mistake. That's definitely a part of the process. So I guess a lot of it is the fact that, first of all, we had the place in Ireland to actually host them. That's where it started, in Ireland. So that was key, to have a space, an actual space. Another key was finding my creative directors. First, Mary O'Connor is Dr. Mary O'Connor, I should say, is just an amazing woman. She brings so much to the table. She already had the network of kids who needed this kind of experience. And Parag Dunn is just a master at everything that he does with the kids. He is incredibly gifted as a teacher, a mentor. We're dear friends. I mean, I'm dear friends, of course, now with Mary Parag because of what we've been through. But the team is important. I couldn't go off and do it myself and just say, hey, let's have a bunch of young people to Kilkea, and I'll teach them how to express themselves creatively. I do a couple of workshops and that's it, because it requires a team of people who bring in the for doing puppets. It's like bringing in the materials to make the puppets and do these incredible performances on stage, and the background of Parg Dunn, who's a director and can direct them in making a film and a play, and all of the different things that we've exposed them to have been a lot of what I never got, and so I feel like they're a place. It's like if you think about it, like a sandbox. It's a safe place to learn. It's a safe place to understand who you are as a creative person.
I think a lot of what happens, you were sort of talking about this in the beginning about how children or young adults aren't seeing life as an adventure anymore. They're not being encouraged to see the big wide world and go, wow, how exciting, as opposed to, wow, how terrifying. And I think a lot of that starts in school, is my experience, is that children aren't being enticed towards curiosity. They're being sort of funneled into, listen to what I'm saying and then accept that thing as truth. And any of the children who are, well, is that true? Oh, I'm curious about that. Can I question you? Are just being kind of squashed down, like, no, stay down in this little box. And I think,
Absolutely.
More and more and more in schools, the creative stuff, the games, the play element, even the sports is being kind of taken out of the curriculum, and other stuff's being shoehorned in, and it's stopping children from having that opportunity for creativity and for curiosity. And I think what you're talking about is, it's like giving them this lovely crucible to go, like, actually go free, and curiosity is the thing that's going to set you alive, that's going to give you your passion, that's going to excite you and make you be like, oh, I can go try this thing. It doesn't matter if I fail. It's just like
just lighting a match.
Yeah, exactly. It's so important.
That just gave me chills. So I think you're onto something. I think that resonates with me for sure.
Yeah, it's powerful. I think the ability, like, there's a guy who I pay a lot of attention to, Michael Meade. Have you come across him?
Yeah, why do I know that name?
He's like a teacher who uses myth a lot, but he works a lot with young people. But he's a beautiful podcast. What's it called? I just know Michael Meade. Anyway, search Michael Meade, we'll see it. But
Okay.
it's like his approach is to give kids essentially education. Like, it should never be more than this. Give kids roots and then give them wings. And if you adhere to that principle, it's a beautiful principle. It makes total sense as well, because the roots, like you said, you had that strong foundation as a kid. And so you felt you were stable. You had like a base. You had like an understanding of yourself and your own identity, probably more so than most people maybe at your age would have had. And that gives you, and then you kind of, you have that exploration phase and you can explore with the sense of adventure. I think that's so important. And it's such a powerful thing. I think if we're going to do anything for kids now, particularly, it's like, okay, just ruffle the feathers, just generally make it okay that we work a little bit with schools as well. And it's like, it's great when we go into a school, they usually assume people who are coming in from outside to educate them, particularly around nutrition and health. They're like, okay, snore, it's going to be more of the same. And we're like, no, we don't want to tell you anything. We want you to tell us stuff. And then also we tell them these stories about how the stuff they're being told is kind of wrong. Most of the stuff they're being sold, it's being, they can, if they can ignore that, then they're on the right track, Yeah. As soon as they start to do something that isn't templated, then oh yeah, that's the way. And it's sort of, you can see it spark, because they're very available for it, but it's just, there isn't those opportunities in the world to do it. Have you are you growing this thing with kids? How is it going? Is it a small thing? How many do you do?
So I had, probably about 15 different workshops in Ireland before we then decided to bring it to Boston. And in Boston, I partnered with a school called Epiphany School, as well as Commonwealth Shakespeare Company, and got the word out with a few different organizations here as how the kids applied. But Epiphany School was huge for us, because Epiphany is a school that offers a private school education to kids who would never be able to afford it. And they are also in an area of Boston called Dorchester, where, a lot of kids, both their parents work, or it's very much a, single family home, and the kids are kind of on their own. So it's when they're on their own, they, inner city schools, they tend to get into trouble, and That's just sort of how it is in certain areas. And Epiphany is this, talk about a safe haven. It's become such an amazing place for kids to go and be, and feel like, they don't have to fall into a pattern of what their, relatives have done or what they see their friends do. They have other options. So much of life really. And, is understanding that you have other options. You don't have to do what you've seen your family do, or if you don't, if you have that creative spark and you don't have to go and, go to school to be a lawyer and then realize that, you really didn't ever want to do that. But, although I never say that that's a bad thing, because anyone who does that, who goes through a rigorous, training program of any kind, is just great fodder for writing about. Then you have a great kind of solid ground to stand on from a writing perspective. That's what, going back to my novel, The Truth About Horses, that's what I did with The Truth About Horses. I knew the horse world. I knew, and I could also speak to it in a way that a 14-year-old girl would speak about it, which is that she knows everything. No one can really tell her anything. She's a horse person. Don't bother telling me, anything. And so there were those two things that I had, the strong, background around horses and in barns and taking care of horses, along with the 14-year-old girl who thought she knew everything, and that was a really fun place for me to come from. And so, that's why, writing is something that no matter what you've done in your life, no matter where you've been, the experiences you've had are just perfect for, choosing a world and choosing characters.
Yeah. And talk to us about Kilkea for a second, because that's obviously really locally interesting for us. Kilkea Castle. You're like, when did you first come there? Do you have horses there? It must be like a crazy playground to have. Like, amazing castle.
It is amazing. It's a magical place. It really is. I mean, every time I go there, I look around and I pinch myself, because first of all, I can't believe that, that we do own it, and that, or, as Jay says, we're just passing through, but still for the time being, it's ours. But it does give you that feeling when you look at it and know the history and how long it's been around. It's going to be around a lot longer than we are. And that's, kind of a humbling thought. But we were married at the Adair Manor a long time ago. And basically, I had been coming over here to horseback ride, over to Ireland to horseback ride. And I met, a lot of people while I was riding, and I would go back every year. And it was I had a passport. I was 21 years old, but it was the only place that I'd gone to outside the United States was Ireland. And that was because of the horse world. And when I met Jay, he's half Irish and half Italian. He had never been to Ireland, but he'd been everywhere else in the world. And so we went to Ireland together. He fell in love with it. And whenever I went to Ireland, I don't necessarily have Irish roots. My maiden name is Scott, which they call Scotch Irish, and I've never really understood what that meant. But I can't necessarily trace my roots as well as Jake could, because he's half Irish, so that made it a lot easier for him. His last name's Cashman, and so he traced his roots to Cork. But however, I always felt like when I went to Ireland, I was going home. There was this feeling of going home for me. And I'm not sure if that's just because of everyone's, from somewhere else. And I just had that feeling that, being in that part of Europe was, for me, just, the feeling of going home. I could have gotten that from anywhere, but I don't think so. I'm not sure. So I have a very special place in my heart for Ireland, because it was the first place I ever went outside the United States, and I'm still going. And of course, the horse culture there, the horse culture, and how much horses have meant to that country, and how much they built, everything around, really, around them is, very much part of
Yeah.
what the horses have brought to that country.
Yeah, for a small country, we punch way above our weight in terms of the types of the horses that we produce with international champions
Yeah.
in like every version of the horse world, flat racing, jump racing, the whole lot. Yeah, my family are involved in that as well. So it's
Mm.
nice that it's a very distinctive thing when people have a relationship with horses. It's like it's there's the it's not like having pets. It's a very different thing. It's like more there's a you have to ask it now or talk to the horse in such a way. There's a venerable kind of respect there, and between you always see it. Even those who live in the world where they're critical of relationships between say particularly with jockeys and that sort of thing in terms of animal welfare, but you can see this incredible respect between the horse and its rider, the horse and its
Yeah.
owner or coach or whatever, which I think it's a beautiful thing because I think it brings both people to a place of being like in a heart space that like gives more respect for the world in general, right?
So true. So true. It's, yeah. And I mean, of course, in preparation, I'm sure for my book as a kid, well, I didn't know it was preparation, but I read all the horse books that I could get my hands on, Misty of Chincoteague and the Black Stallion series and My Friend Flicka. I mean,
Oh
my
yeah.
remember those? Yeah. I read all of them. I'm sure there are more I'm not even remembering, but um yeah, like, those are part of the things that I'm sure went into the big pot that got stirred up and then my book came out.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. It's been really, really,
Yeah.
really, really lovely to meet you and lovely to hear your story and to hear the work you're doing in the world as well. And it's when you say like you got to that position of giving back, it really feels like that's a really genuine mission, and it's lovely to hear. And I hope that work that you do really continues and actually manifests some real change, much needed change in terms of how little people are given a place to explore their creativity and their essence.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been lovely talking to both of you.
Same, absolutely. So it just remains to say thank you very much to our sponsors, Clear Light Saunas. So for those of you that don't live in these beautiful settings where you have like exposure to natural light all day long, infrared is such an important part, both at dawn and at dusk. About 50% of all the rays that the sun produces are infrared, and that's the sort of really juicy sunlight that helps to light up our mitochondria, helps to reduce inflammation, helps to regulate our mood and our immune system, and all sorts of amazing things. So we're very lucky to have partners with Clearlight, and if people want to get a €300 discount off their Clearlight sauna, come and talk to us. We can also get them involved and get them to understand how to get the best out of it. We are giddy sauna users. So that's that. Christy, thank you very much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, really a treat to meet you, and look forward to seeing you down at Kilkea someday, hopefully.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye. Bye, guys. Thank you. Bye. Bye, guys.